again, the Wild have had one pick in the top 10 since 2012. So when you compare these cores and say these guys have a young, fast, speedy core, well, they do. But just let me finish the analysis.
Dude, I'm about to implode.
I know, but I'm just saying you're comparing two different things. So that
I'm not comparing anything.
Right.
I'm comparing. What I am saying is that this is reality now. Whatever the reasons that everybody's path has been to get here, right now the Wild
you started it out by saying that the fault of the Wild was locking into some guys that were.
But
that
I'm
were
just
good
saying
for,
they should have seen this coming. Welcome back to Worst Seats in the House. Michael Russo, Anthony LaPanta, coming to you from a Monday night, right? In where are we? Hopkins, Minnesota.
Off to a great start.
Yeah, I know. I've been so many different places in the Twin Cities today. It's not even funny. And I wrote 2 articles. I'm sure you came from the golf course.
I did.
Yeah. I wrote 2 articles, one on Svechnikov, the other who does not play for the Wild, and one on the Wild, our Wild Insider with Joe Smith and I. And then I had to do a bunch of errands. Then I get this emergency. I probably shouldn't say this actually, but I get this like emergency text message call from Elliot Friedman because he's a huge Vikings fan and he's going to the Detroit game this weekend with Kyle Bakauskas, David Amber, and Kevin Bieksa, and he wanted a Chuck Foreman jersey. So I went down to the first time I've ever been there, the Vikings practice facility in Eagan. What a great complex but their store was awesome. A guy named Bob in there who used to work for the Wild in the warehouse helped me out, made a Foreman jersey, and then I rushed to a UPS store and sent it very expensively to Canada to try to get it there in time to get through customs and so he can go to Detroit with this Foreman jersey. But apparently he was a huge Foreman fan.
Well, it sounds like a very busy and productive day for you.
Yes. So how'd you golf?
Yeah, I played pretty well, actually. I hadn't swung a club in like 3 weeks because we had a long road trip and then I had a busy weekend when we got home. And I was just going to go hit balls, got to the course. There was nobody on the first tee. So I figured, what the heck, just jumped down and actually played pretty well for a guy that hadn't swung for a long time.
Nice.
Could be the last round of the year. Margot said she's going to hold me to it now that I said it could be the last round, because I think last year I played 6 times where I said it could be the last round.
Well, the weather looks incredible this week, so I don't think it is your last round.
Right.
And a couple off days this week still to come.
We
will talk about the Wild, a grim weekend in Minnesota sports. Man, what a weekend, huh? The Vikings, well, it's starting on Thursday night. Vikings get killed. Gophers get killed. Wolves lose and lose in L.A. Wild can't win a game. The Carson Wentz thing, talk about just absolute pain. I could have broken that story a week ago, by the way. Ryan Hartman told me exactly what the injury had to be based on the type of brace that he was wearing, and he was to the money. Torn labrum, right, dislocated off the socket, and he knew exactly what it was just based on the type of sling that he had, like, coming out of his jersey.
Well,
Ryan Hartman could be a sports writer.
Yeah, you could. You've got your sources. You could have broken it with my people are telling me, and nobody would have ever guessed it was a third line center.
Yep, I would have exactly. Good point. A guy who, by the way, played unbelievable last night in a losing effort. Let's talk about the Wild right now. By the way, I just talked to Louis Nanny on the phone, and every take that I have of the Wild, he completely 100% agreed with me. And as we talked about on last week's pod, he's the smartest hockey guy you and I both know. Right. So right away, we're going to stuff this pod that everything I say is accurate and everything you say is not.
Right. Well, no, I just spent 10 days with Louis, so I've heard all of Louis' analysis on this, and And let's just say that there were a couple times your name came up at dinner, and it was followed by, what does he know? What does he talk? So it wasn't a total agreement. I don't know what he told you today, but
well, I mean, the big thing that we both talked about today is, and this is something he and I have talked about for 2 or 3 years with the re-signing of a lot of their core, is that these guys were like perfect to get you through the phase of the buyouts, but eventually the check would come due and you would have to sort of move on. But it just seems like things have been compounded to the point where they keep on re-signing guys, and now they're facing teams like New Jersey, Utah, and San Jose in a row, and these are young, fast teams with great young, fast cores, and the Wild do have guys with a lot of mileage on them, and they look like it this last weekend.
Yeah, and that's. I actually had this conversation with a buddy of mine today, so I did a little digging into this, and we talked about it on these broadcasts lately, and he brought up the same. He said, it's just these teams have superstars, and I said, all right, so let's really look at it a little more closely and remember what you're comparing. So we'll start with New Jersey. Well, first of all, New Jersey they missed the playoffs 10 times in 12 years.
Right.
They had two number one.
Look, I'm not discounting anything that you're about to say. I'm just telling you.
I know. So but when you're not comparing apples to apples when you compare the way these teams were built. They had 2 number 1 overall picks in a 3-year span. They had 8 picks in the top 6 in a 7-year span. Now, keep in mind, the Wild have had 1 pick in the top 10 since 2012. And then you get Utah. Utah missed the playoffs 11 times in 12 years. The only exception was the year almost everybody made the playoffs during COVID. And they had, I forget what the exact number was, I think they had 8 picks in the top 8 over they had 6 number 1s over a 3-year span.
They've had 50 draft picks in the last.
It's unbelievable. Then you look at a couple of the other teams that we compared to, even San Jose. San Jose had 9 first-round picks in the last 4 drafts. And a bunch of them, they had a number 1, a number 2, and a number 6. A 7, 1, 2, 3. Mm-hmm. Well, again, the Wild have had 1 pick in the top 10 since 2012. So when you compare these cores and say these guys have a young, fast, speedy core, well, they do. But just let me finish the analysis.
Dude, I'm about to implode.
I know, but I'm just saying you're comparing 2 different things. So that
I'm not comparing anything.
Right.
I'm comparing. What I am saying is that this is reality now. Whatever the reasons that everybody's path has been to get here, right now the Wild
started it out by saying that the fault of the Wild was locking into some guys that were.
But
that
I'm
were
just
good
saying
for,
they should have seen this coming. But the reality
is the path out of it, if you want to compare to these other teams, and now I'm just playing the devil's advocate here. Utah still hasn't made the playoffs. I think they look like a playoff team this year, but they still have. San Jose is still 2 or 3 years away. New Jersey's a team that I think everybody's looked at the last couple as one of the teams about to take a step in the East, but they've only made the playoffs 3 times since 2012. So if you want to compare how those teams are built, you are to take a Wild roster and say the other way to build it would be to go this route and go young. You're talking a decade of futility to get yourself to that spot. And the Wild were turning over a roster without ever taking a step away from trying to contend. So you're going to build your team differently. You're not going to have number 1, 2, 3 overall picks at the top of your lineup.
But they compound it all the time by their big target this summer was Brock Nelson, who has been not good for the Colorado Avalanche. At some point, and they were going to, by the way, pay him the exact same thing. Right. So, my point is, all right, regardless of how they all got here, right now the Wild are here, and the future is Anaheim getting better. All these young teams. Detroit's looking like they're on the rise. Chicago, as you and I talked about last night, are going to be on the rise. And the Wild here still have this young core without, for your point, without a lot of the upper echelons, Logan Cooley's of the world. And so now we are here. However they both got here, how are the Wild going to absolutely continue to compete with this when they're just getting older? They are locked into a lot of this core. And they look like a team that gets skated around by these young teams with incredibly young talent.
I think the way they get there is because their young core of guys are potential superstars. Matt Boldy, Brock Faber, Zeev Buium, Marco Rossi. These guys, and these are all guys. Now, Boldy and Buium were both 12 overall picks. Rossi was 9. He's the only pick they've had in the top 10 since Matt Dumba in 2012. Faber, of course, was a second-round pick that they got in a trade. That's their core. And I like the core. I think that core is terrific. Now, it isn't going to be Macklin Celebrini.
Yeah.
It just isn't.
Is it going to be Clayton Keller, Dylan Gunther, Logan Cooley?
I don't know, but those guys, like you look at Clayton Keller, these are guys the Wild didn't have a shot to draft.
I get it.
So I'm saying
these are the players on these other teams.
They are, but the rest of their
night.
core, I don't say that I'd put over the Wilds right now.
And then
they also keep in mind the Wild happen to have a guy named Kaprizov who was a 5th-round pick. Who right now every one of those teams would say if our young star turns into the player Kaprizov is, we win.
Right. Not at $17 million, though. I mean, the great thing, you look at the Utah Mammoth now, other than Logan Cooley, every single guy is signed at a great deal. And again, like,
Utah's going to be good. I'm not arguing with you, but I'm saying it took them 10 years of futility to get to that point.
So do you really think that Brock Faber and Zeev Buium, who's going to be a stud defenseman, with Marco Rossi and Matt Boldy, and Kirill Kaprizov are going to be able to turn themselves into a cup contender over a lot of these young teams?
I think
because that is the name of the game.
I know, but I think if you look at that core of 5 you just mentioned for the Wild, and that doesn't include Eriksson Ek, who's going to be a really important piece of a contending team. But let's just take the 5 more superstar type personalities and players: Faber and Buium, Rossi, Boldy, Kaprizov. I think if you look at any of those teams that we just talked about, I'm not positive that you'd say their 5 are clearly better than that 5. I mean, look at I think like Macklin Celebrini is going to be a superstar.
Right.
He's already a really good player. I think Will Smith's going to be a good player. Eklund's going to be a good player. I don't look at either Smith or Eklund and say that they are clearly better than Matt Boldy.
No, I agree there.
And so I mean, that's San Jose's 2nd and 3rd best player.
Right. But
and then if you look at Utah,
they also have a ton of kids coming.
They do, but I'm saying they would, right now, every one of those teams would say, if you tell me one of my guys is going to turn into Kirill or Boldy, I'll take it right now. Absolutely, without question. Even Clayton Keller. Yeah. I bet you if you went to Utah and said, if I told you right now, you could either say Clayton Keller is going to be as good a player as Matt Boldy or roll the dice and see if he ends up being better. I'm not certain that they'd say we think Keller's going to be a better player. I mean, he might be. They're close. They're both really good players, but it isn't like, it's you compare them to, like, let's say Jack Hughes in New Jersey. Well, Hughes looked great against the Wild. He's looked great here for a week. He was the number 1 overall pick. The Wild didn't have a number 1 pick, so yes, Hughes I think is probably going to be a better player than anybody on this Wild roster in terms of a scorer, top line center guy. But other than him, who would you take off that New Jersey team ahead of anybody?
I would take Nico Hischier over everybody on the Wild.
But you would take Hischier over, let's say, Boldy or Kaprizov right now?
Maybe not them, but I would absolutely take
over the rest of the guys, for sure.
But maybe I could probably argue. He's
in the same conversation. Where was
I
he
could
drafted?
argue with. I get it.
He was drafted number 1 overall.
I have talked to you on this podcast for 7 years that this team always picks 20th.
No, I get it. But I'm just saying, we're talking about their best 5. Would you say that their best 5 are clearly better than
I am looking at the Wild roster as a whole now, and I don't see a team that is able to compete against really much of anybody right now. They are a team that just lost to the San Jose Sharks yesterday.
No, I know. And right now, with the current state, with no Zuccarello, no Foligno, they're going to have a hard time. The way they played last night, we both can agree they were the better team on the ice. But let's say Utah instead, because Utah, they were clearly not the better team on the ice. And so could you compete against Utah if you had a healthy roster? I think you probably could, but there's still some questions because I think in a
7-game series, it might end in 4. Against Utah. I really do.
They're not that different.
They are going to be, by the end of the season, a really good team, and they are.
I think they're going to. I think they're going to be good.
They got a bright feet.
They play hard.
Yep.
But they've got some questions too. For sure, they have questions. They still don't know what they have in Vejmelka and net. I think he's good, but he's not a no-brainer guy. Their defensive core is still, I think, a little light. Not lightweight. I mean, like a little light in terms of cup contender type status. They've got top-end offensive talent. But we've also seen over the years them look at what the Wild have done to them for years in their own
recently,
zone.
Though.
Well, up until last year.
I don't know. I would take a lot of their blue liners over some of the guys on Minnesota right now. Would you take Sergachev right now over
Mikhail Sergachev?
Yep.
I would take Sergachev. Well, for sure in our top 6.
Yeah.
And I like Simashev.
Simashev's going to be a stud.
He's going to be a stud. We saw him last night. He's going to be good. But remember they're playing Ian Cole a lot.
I don't know. He had 8 block shots and might have saved the game at the end.
Yeah, but I'm not sure I'd want Ian Cole. I mean I'd rather have John Merrill or Declan Chisholm than Ian Cole at this point. And that,
I don't think in the playoffs. Like again, we're talking about like a team that
I'm just talking about compared to Utah.
Right.
So the bottom line is I think this Wild team right now, Matt Zuccarello is a major loss for this team. They were probably a top 6 forward short coming into the year, and now you take Zuccarello out, you're too short, and it means that every time you lose a guy in the top 6, where other guys have to elevate, now they're out of position and it weakens everything below you. And they're running a 4th line out that probably should be in the American Hockey League.
It might not even be a good American Hockey League line.
But that's because you had no Zuccarello, no Sturm, and no Foligno last night. And Nico Sturm is a loss that we probably haven't talked enough about because of what he would have brought to the bottom end of this lineup. And, put a 3rd line, move Marcus Johansson down to the 3rd line, put Vladimir Tarasenko down in the 3rd or 4th line role, put Nico Sturm at that center spot. And this team looks a lot different than it does right now. But I think the bigger concern to me is the 2 young defensemen, and Jiricek and Buyam. And this was the other part of the conversation.
I'm glad you're about to say this because my God, as people have come after me for. Well, sometimes let me just interrupt you on one thing on Buyam. He has been outstanding. He's going to be a superstar defenseman in this league, but he thinks 5-on-5 is a power play every shift right now, and he needs to chillax at times.
Yeah, and so does Jiricek. The couple of the turnovers he had last night were terrible. Just inside the blue line, led to 2 breakaways the other way. One of them, Buyam bailed him out. The other one, he got lucky because they missed the net. But
how about when he chased up on the Toffoli goal
on the shorthanded?
On the power play. Yeah.
When the Wild were short, and that was. I don't think they were going to use him in the 3rd period, but when Middleton was in the box, he had to play on the penalty kill. But the point with those guys is just that I had looked at some numbers before the game Sunday morning, and I looked at the Wild's defensive pairing because this team's been built on defense for 15 years. And I looked last year at, I think I used 200 minutes as the threshold or the cutoff. And I went expected goals against, and the Wild had 4 D pair that had played that many minutes together, and all 4 of them were in the top 1/3 of the league. This year, I think it was 45 minutes I cut it off. They had 5 or 6 different sets of D. Not one of them was in the top 75. And the big difference for that is because of the guys I mentioned earlier. Their bottom part of their defensive core was anchored by John Merrill, Zach Bogosian. Declan Chisholm had to move up in the defensive pairing sometimes due to injury. But what they were able to do was stabilize everything else. And I'm not saying that the Wild should have kept those 2 guys here instead of playing the young guys, but this was the end of the conversation I had with my other buddy earlier today, where he was like, the Wild have just we have to see what these young guys have. I said, okay, but you're seeing it right now on the blue line. They didn't keep the veteran guys. They instead said, let's give the minutes to the guys that are the future of the organization. And I agree. Buyam's going to be he's going to be a game-changing defenseman,
100%.
somebody that the Wild have never had. But he isn't yet. There are flashes where he makes plays, but they tried to play him in the top 4. You had 2 of your 3 defensive pair that had one of these inexperienced guys on there when he was playing with Spurgeon and Jiricek was playing with Middleton. So last night they decided to go with the top 4 instead and minimize how much those 2 guys played. They still impact games, and they both have a chance to be good players, but they're not yet. And these are the lumps you take when you play those kind of guys, but there's a balance. You just can't play a bunch of them. They tried to play Urov up in the top 6 on Saturday night, and John Hynes said we've put him in the top 6. We haven't put him on a line this good yet. He was playing with Boldy and Eriksson Ek. The result, The expected goals for when they were on the ice was 2.3%. It's the lowest I've ever seen of any line ever in a game. And it wasn't all Urov, but he was a part of it, and he wasn't ready yet. So they put him back on the fourth line, and they're going to try and keep these guys and allow them opportunities to grow their game, but they have to shield them and shelter them. They can't just throw them out there. Or the result
was that lining? It was Urov?
It was Urov with Boldy and Eriksson.
Okay. Yeah, I couldn't remember.
And I mean, and they were in their own zone the whole night. And so those are the kind of growing pains that some of these other teams have gone through. I mean, look at how many times Arizona ran Keller and Schmaltz out there against the Wild. Well, the Wild beat them 14 out of 15 times.
Well, look, you and I are in agreement on that. I totally get the Wild are picking 20th. They hit on Rossi when they finally got it.
But the point with that is that they're giving the future of the organization opportunities to play, and these are some of the growing pains you get with it. And you're going to lose some games you shouldn't because of mistakes they make that they've got to. Now, they have to limit these quickly, or else you have to just take things away from them. You have to take time away from them. You have to send them back to Iowa. But I think they were hoping that the learning curve would be a little quicker.
Yeah, the Zach Bogosian injury you can't even make up, right? I mean, like they send Juracek down for a very good reason, and then that night, Bogosian breaks his foot and has to have surgery. So now you have Juracek that you have to play, and
right, because now if Bogosian's healthy, I'm not sure our third defensive pair last night wouldn't have been Bogosian and Damon Hunt, and both of the young guys would have been down in Iowa.
Like, again, Wild fans went after me for even insinuating that they might send Boyum down. The question is, he's taking his lumps defensively. He's making some of the veterans tear their hair out because of that. And so the question is, would you rather him work out the kinks there or rather him work out here? If you want to win here, you might have to determine that it's down there, or you just determine as an organization it's better for him to learn here, even if he's not playing every night. Sometimes you take him out of lineup, but at least he's with your NHL coaches. Juracek is the one guy, again, this is not a rookie. This is somebody that's like a fifth-year pro, Anthony, and he makes the most mind-boggling mistakes that I think I've ever seen that doesn't get corrected. I mean, and the other thing that I'm worried about with him, trust me, we are all excited that hockey season is here. If you're a hockey fan, that means you enjoy the colder weather too. Now that hockey season is here, that means furnace season is starting up as well. I love the fact that Aquarius Home Services is my go-to for anything to do with my HVAC system. Tune-ups, repairs, replacement, energy-efficient solutions, air purification, humidifiers, they do it all. They make sure the air in my home is the best it can be. In fact, Nick were at my home last month doing my furnace tune-up. And don't forget, hockey season usually means cold and flu season, so that air purification system is pretty key right now. Take my advice and check out Aquarius Home Services. Right now, they have a crazy good deal. A furnace tune-up for only $29. You heard that right. Only $29 to get your furnace checked out before the real cold weather hits. A trained tech gives your system a thorough evaluation. They'll go over all the findings with you. And trust me, finding little problems before they become big problems can save you big time. That saves you time, money, and headaches. Get ready for winter and schedule your tune-up at AquariusHomeservices.com. That's AquariusHomeservices.com. Aquarius, earning the right to be recommended. And don't forget to mention that Russo sent you. Deer hunting season is here, and it's time to own your odds with OnX Hunt, the GPS hunting app trusted by millions of hunters. With the Hunt app, you'll have access to nationwide public and private land ownership information, waypoints, tracks, and much more, all at your fingertips. Go to onxmaps.com/hunt. That's onxmaps.com/hunt to sign up today.
Hey, Mark Rosen here for Stretch Lab. I had my introductory first stretch when I was visiting my relatives in New Jersey. I went to the local Stretch Lab there for my 50-minute session. I felt so good afterwards. And when I came back, I immediately called that Stretch Lab in Eden Prairie. They have locations all over the Twin Cities where my nephew first signed up. I've been hooked ever since. There are locations I mentioned throughout the Twin City area, but I stuck with my Tuesday morning appointment with Jason to get my 50-minute stretch in as part of my schedule. It's like a meditation session. He stretches out my legs, my hips, my back, my neck, my traps, all of it. And I take some deep breaths and I feel like a new man every single time I leave. My nephew's in his late 20s. I'm a little bit older, but it doesn't matter. Stretching is so important in our daily routine. Having an expert do the work is the only way to go. My advice, give Stretch Lab a chance to improve your overall health. Check out a location near you.
Hey, this is Randy Shaver. Along with Kevin Gorg, we host the show Fantasy Huddle on Talk North. Each week, we're going to break down the matchups for the NFL season and try to give you the best chance to win your fantasy football games each and every week. Join us for Fantasy Huddle on Talk North.
And the other thing that I'm worried about with him, and I wrote about this in with Joe in the Athletic tomorrow, is this team right now ranks 24th in hits for defensemen. Now, we all know the way they're built. They're a mobile defenseman. We never thought that they were going to be this brute defenseman. But Jared Spurgeon is their leader in hits. And then next is Jake Middleton. Juracek got his first the other day, and it was an accidental one. Yesterday, if you look at the Ryan Reeves goal, on that board battle, he's not even trying to engage. He's reaching in and then loses it and goes in. At 6'4", I'm not saying you have to put a guy through the glass, but you got to battle. And he's losing puck battles. He's turning pucks over. And, again, you can deal with it because we're expecting young mistakes from young guys, but this is not a rookie. And I am wondering from a hockey sense standpoint if he's gonna ever get it. Like it's very concerning.
I don't think they know the answer to that question yet. Every once in a while he'll make a play. Like he made a couple passes last night that made me do a little double take. Like, was that Juracek that just threw that because it was a cross ice tape to tape pass?
Right.
But the couple turnovers inside the offensive blue line were why he wasn't. I think John Hynes is just going to have to get more creative with how he uses his lineup in the short term, and I think we saw that last night in the third period. I don't believe he was going to use either one of those guys other than the way he did with Bouillon was a few offensive zone faceoffs when they were trying to come from behind. He got a few starts there, but there was nothing in his own zone, and it's hard because you're asking a lot then of guys like Spurgeon and Brodin and Middleton and Faber. But to me right now, I say I got to roll with those guys for 24, 25 minutes a night at least.
Yeah, Faber played 28 last night. I know a lot was on the overtime. But, to your point on trying to get creative, like he's trying to shelter these guys. Like, on the third goal last night, Kaprizov turns it over. They give up the goal. So now it's a neutral zone faceoff after the goal. So you're thinking, all right, I'll get a fourth line shift out and throw Juracek and Bouillon out there.
Against their fourth line.
Against their fourth line. And what do? They lose the draw. They go in the zone, and Juracek and Urov lose the puck battle, and Ryan Reeves scores. I mean, that's the type of things that just kill you. And again, when you don't have a fourth line you could trust, when you don't have a third defense pair you could trust, you think, all right, I could at least throw them in that situation, and it still backfires, and they fall down two goals. There's a lot of things that are going on with this club right now. The Stars, I don't think, have been as good as they need to be. The third period last night looked like the kind of hockey you would have expected to see from this club in longer spurts coming out of the gates this season. But the Stars haven't been as good as they needed to be. They haven't gotten the key save when they've needed it. Yeah.
You look at
even the overtime winner, right?
Yeah, I mean, one save. It's a breakaway and it's Celebrini, but I look at the...
It's not like he deked him out of his pants. He shot out. He didn't even leave the ice, the puck.
Right. And those are some of the saves that they got
away
early in the season last year, where it was, all right, everything's going a little haywire, and it's a couple 2-on-1s, and then you got the big save that allowed the team to find their game. Look at the goals early against Gustafsson in the Utah game. Yes, the first one was a ridiculously good tip, but it's okay to make a save on a great tip, great scoring chance.
Same with the third goal, right?
And they haven't gotten that stop very often this year. Because of that, I was talking with Wes Walls last night, and he said, sometimes you just are in one of those spots where you feel like every time you make a mistake, it winds up in your net. And that's what is happening right now because they're not getting that big stop that just lets everybody settle down.
Yeah. Although I will say this, in Gus's defense in that Utah game, and you tweeted the high danger chances, like even when it was 3-0, he kept it at 3-0 despite them getting unbelievably outchanced.
I'm not blaming the goal. Yeah. The goaltending has been fine, but they just haven't been great. They haven't stolen the game when you've needed it. And those are the games that they got occasionally last year where down 1-0 never turned into 2-0. This year, it's just been a few too many where 1-0 became 2 and 3-0 before the team could find their game. And then, they're also the bounces just seem to be going against him too. And I'm a big believer in that you create your luck. And that's why I think like Bouillam's goal in the third period was a great example of that. They played the game the right way the whole third period. And yes, Bouillam gets a break when the puck hits Delandry on the shoulder and pops up over the goaltender. But if you look at the overtime goal, the Wild are all over him. If that shot isn't blocker side, and they happen to be facing a lefty goalie with the right catching glove, if that shot's to a conventional goaltender where that's glove side, that puck never bounces far enough out for Celebrini to get to it.
Yeah.
And I would argue that the guys on their bench probably didn't want the change at the time they made it, because there was no way Celebrini's going to catch up with the play. But because he's behind the play and the shot hits the blocker and deflects all the way to him, all of those things had to happen for that breakaway to happen.
It's crazy.
You couldn't have played the overtime any better than the Wild played it. They get a post. They have two great looks for Faber. And, look at the overtime loss in Philly. Boldy hit a post in that game, and then it came the other way, and the next puck's in the back of the net.
Eriksson Ek, right?
Eriksson Ek, hit the post. Yeah, and it just feels like right now those are that's the way things are going. But this isn't like, hey, it doesn't matter because it's just bad luck. It isn't. They're not playing the game well enough to overcome bad luck. Yeah. And that to me,
I do like that you believe that you can create your own luck, but that jinxes aren't real.
I think you create your own luck with work, because if you work in the offensive zone,
just like jinxes.
Well, jinxes are not real, but luck is real. Bouillam threw the puck toward the net. It hit their guy in the shoulder and went in the net. But it's because the Wild had been working their tails off that whole period. They were in the zone for 14. They had 11 minutes of zone possession time in the third period.
That's crazy.
And we get that stat sent to us at the end of every period by the Sport Logic guys. I haven't seen a team ever over 6 minutes in any game this season. And I think the time I saw 6, it was when the Wild had like 3 power plays in the period or something. Here they had 11 minutes of possession time.
It is. I'm always amazed. I remember even in the 90s, like seeing stats of how little time, or actually like how much time is actually of the game spent in the neutral zone. I remember there was one Mike Modano. I got to ask him if he ever saw that. There was a study of Mike Modano one game of how often the puck was on his stick, and it was like in the entire game, it was like minute 2 of just the puck. It's
the
crazy.
most puck possession that guys will get, I'm surprised it'd be a minute. Most guys don't, especially in the offensive zone. If guys get 30 seconds of puck possession time in the offensive zone. Now, I heard a great stat. We had Mike Kelly, the guy from Sport Logic. I don't know if any of you guys saw it. He was on our pregame show live the other night in New Jersey, and he had a stat. We were talking about turnover percentage, like of the times you have the puck, how many times is the next touch by an opponent? And I think it was Quinn Hughes. I got to remember if it was Hughes or Makar. It was one or the other. That they averaged like 98 puck touches a game, and which seemed amazing to me.
Right.
98 times the puck was on their stick.
Yeah.
And most of the time he said it was for less than 2 seconds, but 98 times it was on their stick.
Interesting.
It's a crazy high number.
Yeah. Before we get to the questions, and again, and by the way, you can come up and ask questions. We got merchandise here if you want to grab if you ask a question. I did want to ask you about Brock Faber. Here's a guy that's clearly been beating himself up. Last night, it's just a little coaching move, but we talked about how John Hynes intentionally going into that game put Middleton and Spurgeon together, even if it meant putting the rookies together, just to get these guys to start to feel a little bit more like themselves. It was the same thing with Brock Faber. He sees that Brock, it beats him up. He read all the quotes after the game against Utah. So against San Jose, what he did is he threw him on the second power play unit with Zia Bouillam, Spurgeon on the top unit, and suddenly, he gets a little more ice time. And Brock Faber just looks like a much more confident player. It was, I thought, a very smart coaching move, and hopefully this is the beginning of Brock looking more like himself on a consistent basis.
I think the power play might have been a mental thing for him because he really didn't get much ice time in that power play spot. But he did assist on 2 goals.
I
just think he looked like himself in that game, and I thought the way he answered questions after the Saturday night loss is the reason why I never have a concern about that guy. This is not a guy who is coasting because he signed a big contract. This is a guy that's putting more pressure on himself because the big contract kicked in.
And I wrote a story right before the season, and I like because of this. Because of the salary, people are, his numbers were 100% going to come down because he was on the power play, because defensemen get a ton of points on the power play. And especially on this team, if you're even on the number 2 power play, you don't get a lot of ice time because the number 1 power play is either scoring or they're on the ice for a long time because they're so much in the zone. And I think that people are starting to look at him like he's just been this world's worst defenseman. And I've seen some people fooled them into giving him this contract. He is still going to be an excellent defenseman in this league. And it's not illegal to be just a shutdown guy, like a Jacob Slavin or something like that. And
like a Jonas Brodin, his partner here.
I think I think he's still he has the legs and the ability to still create offense by getting the puck on transition. He's got a great shot. I think he's still going to be able to do that. But I think he just needs to take a lot of pressure off himself. This is why it's also so hard to play at home. He sees everything, he hears everything, he just takes so much upon himself, which is why I still think he's the future captain of this team, or at least should be the future captain of this team. Who knows? He doesn't make $17 million. I just thought those
comments were terrific at a time where that way it was what a lot of the other players were saying similar things, but for a guy that young to step up and just essentially put the entire struggle of the team on his shoulders. And I thought in the game Sunday, he just looked more like himself.
Absolutely.
And that's why it would have been it was almost like it was meant to be that he was going to have the game on his stick at the end. And he had the 2 great looks in overtime and just didn't finish. And even that, after the game, that was what he talked about. Not the fact that he had played 28 minutes in the game, that he had been terrific all night, but it was that I had a chance to win it for us and I missed.
Yeah, it's a 3-on-2 and the guy made the save. It's you can't blame him. Unfortunately, they had their one change of one player in overtime. It's the brilliant Macklin Celebrini, who again showed us why he's so brilliant. And he just puck ups over his stick as he's trying to one-touch it to Rossi, and unfortunately he's off to the races. Question?
Yes. So I have a quick question before my real question. So Anthony,
by the way, I like your shirt.
So
you can't get a second. No, I'm just kidding.
Stylish tonight. Anthony, last month you sat right there and said that you actually bet Michael that Johansson, who is now in the Hart conversation, is going to finish his career with more points than Ogren. Are you willing to double down on that?
I might take the bet.
Yeah, I'll double down on it for sure. I mean, this was more just a statement that what Johansson has done in his career gets downplayed and overlooked a lot. And boy, he has been great for this team so far this year. He really has. His game, we were talking about this a little bit on the broadcast last night. If you look at what he had done in his last contract, which was $2 million a year, if I remember right.
2 years times 2.
I bet you'd be hard pressed to find another guy at $2 million that other than rookies that were on entry level deals. And this year he signed for $800, right?
Right.
And find another guy right now that's producing like he is at $800,000. I think you'd have a hard time.
My real question is this. There was a very good article written in the Athletic this morning by a very talented writer. I'm not sure if you saw it, Anthony, or not.
Let's just assume I missed it.
Okay.
I'll get to it later.
This really talented writer was quoting Bill Guerin and said something.
I was interested in what you were saying in what article.
I kind of had an idea where he was headed.
We had so many actually awesome articles, like vertical wide today.
He made a comment. Guerin made a comment which really surprised me. I'll just read part of this quote from you, Michael. If you fall too far behind, or if you're not solid at the beginning, you can really put yourself in a bad spot for the playoffs. So it is serious. I'm concerned because it's very fixable. Is it fixable? Mm-hmm. And what I say, because Guerin went on to say that basically the possibility of making a trade right now is not going to happen, pretty much.
Yeah.
Zuccarello's nowhere near coming back. We don't even know what Stern brings to their table. He hasn't played a game yet. They have who they have.
Yeah.
And if fixable means getting this team righted in time before they're so far behind they can't make the playoffs, is this team fixable?
Yeah.
And how?
Well, just real quick, and I'll let Anthony answer the question because you addressed it to him. But that was sort of that was sort of my intention on the way I opened the podcast with my question to him is that to me this is the team. We've seen them play great before, but you know what the reality is that this core, which we know has not really won anything other than really good regular seasons, has not proven themselves when it mattered, and they keep on getting older while these other teams are just loaded with a lot of talent right now. And we just saw in a row 3 really fast teams really outskate this core. And that was sort of my intention. So I'm kind of with your question is, can you fix that? Because however they all got here, and I don't disagree with your statement on how the 10 years of misery that a lot of teams had here, this is the team right now. This is the team right now.
You don't have to yell about it.
I know. We're having all sorts of audio things here.
Yeah, I think, and I didn't read the article or hear your conversation with Billy, but I
was alone with Billy, so you couldn't have heard
right.
that, and you don't have a password to The Athletic because Margot's locked it from you.
I got to get that back. I think the way I would interpret that is that it's fixable in that I think he looks at the players they have and knows there's more there.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think he looks at it and says it's fixable. I hope they don't overreact and overpay for a player that is a short-term fix that isn't a long-term fit. Yes, you'd love to add a top 6 type scoring player for this team, and I think at some point this season, there's a pretty good chance they will do that. I wouldn't do it right now based on everything that we've heard talking around the league about who might be available at this point. There just isn't the right guy out there, in my opinion. But that's why I think he's saying it's fixable. And I don't want to. We don't have to go down the road of panic. And is it time to panic yet? I mean, it's not time to panic, but points early in the season do matter. Right now, I mean, I don't know if you looked at it, what are they? The Wild are 2 points behind the last playoff team, and so they have 72 games left. Chicago's got 73, and they're 2 points behind them. That certainly isn't time to panic. If you were 1-9, maybe it'd be time to panic. But right now, it's just. I think the bigger concern is that they haven't played the game the way the Wild need to play the game to win. Yeah. Whether they were getting wins or losses, because let's say they win those 2 OT games and they're 5-5, I wouldn't feel any differently about it because I still don't think you've seen what you need to see from this team night in and night out to play the way that they've always played.
Yeah.
Haven't seen it from Kirill. Haven't seen it from Eriksson Ek. Haven't seen it from Spurgeon and Brodin and Faber yet. None of them have been on top of their game yet. And so I think that's why he's saying it's fixable. Yeah. We just need our guys to be our guys.
And by the way, the panic thing is like when I said that on Twitter today, I mean, this has just become an inside joke with the whole panic thing. I wasn't really trying to get anybody to panic. You weren't looking
at it saying
and
that
I knew
we're
I wasn't
behind Chicago and they've got a game in hand.
And I knew I was not getting Anthony to panic. That is for sure. Mary, what's up?
Yeah. Hi. Am I at the right place here?
Yeah. Perfect.
Okay. Well, comment and a question. Well, this for Michael. I always had dreamed that Granlund would make his way back here somehow. And this when he was a free agent this summer. And I just hoped, but I know you've said Guerin's not a Granlund guy. So that's history. And my question is,
I think we all like Granlund actually would look great here, right? I mean, they need another top 6 guy, and I mean he could still produce. He had 5 points the other night, but yeah, I mean also he's making didn't they give him like $7 million? Yeah, right. I mean
I'd love to see Granlund in our top 6 right now, but probably not for $7 million.
No.
And I want to tell you about Twill in the Edina Galleria. Scott Dayton's Twill in the Edina Galleria. TwillMN.com is the website. I'm wearing my Johnny O hat. I'm wearing one of my many Peter Millar shirts. Johnny O and Peter Millar are 2 of my favorite brands out of Twill in the Edina Galleria. When I've been going to Wolves game lately, I've been wearing my Dingman shoes. I've been wearing my Brax pants, my either Peter Millar or Johnny O shirts, pullovers. The Wolves games are weird because they're really cold, and then they turn on the fire jets before the game and singe your eyebrows. You need to be prepared for all kinds of different temperatures in that building. And I just use all my Twill stuff. And as we do more shows here at TalkNorth.com on video, I'll be wearing more Twill stuff because it's really simple. I don't always try to look good. Sometimes I'm very happy being a slob. and I wear old sweats and t-shirts. If I'm trying to look presentable in any way, Talk North meetings, sponsor meetings, big games, going out in public, going out to dinner, I just put on something I bought at Twill. It's just that simple. If I put on something I bought at Twill, I'm going to look good. I'm playing a Randy Shaver's golf tournament on Monday. I'm going to wear Twill stuff to that too. Golf, walk around town, dinner, whatever. TwillMN.com. Go to Twill in the Edina Galleria. They're laid back. They love talking sports. They're nice people. Tell them we sent you. You'll have a good time, and you'll end up walking out with something great.
Hey, have you been dreaming of a lake cabin lifestyle with boating, fishing, and family fun in northern Minnesota? Well, lately I've thought a lot about how cool it would be to have a getaway like so many Minnesotans. And if you're like me, you probably think that owning your own lakeside getaway is beyond your budget. Well, if you think lake cabin real estate prices keep going up, well, think again. This is Russo, and I'm here to tell you there is an affordable way to enjoy a cabin lifestyle and all that goes with it. And yes, I said affordable. I founded a Clamshell Beach Resort, which is located on the Whitefish chain of 14 lakes for you and your family to enjoy. Here's how. Clamshell has lake homes that offer deeded fractional ownership, and the keywords there are deeded and fractional. You own it. Imagine having 5 weeks a year to enjoy Clamshell with its beaches, pool, and lodge that's full of kids' activities. Is golf your game? There's a great golf course right across the road. Like winter sports? Well, you can go ice fishing, cross-country skiing, or snowmobiling right out the door at Clamshell. And there's no maintenance, no grass mowing, no snow removal. It's done all for you. And you can own a share of Clamshell Beach Resort at an affordable price. To learn more about ownership opportunities at Clamshell Beach Resort, go to cottagesonwhitefish.com or contact Pat Egan at 612-220-9819. That's cottagesonwhitefish.com or Pat Egan at 612-220-9819.
Royal Credit Union's 4.00% APY 12-month certificate has guaranteed returns at maturity and no minimum opening balance for fast and easy opening. Are you saving for college, wedding, retirement, or a large purchase? Reach your savings goals faster and open a 4.00% annual percentage yield 12-month certificate at any Royal office or online at rcu.org/certificate saver. Early withdrawal penalties could reduce earnings and principal. APY accurate as of 9/29/25. Insured by NCUA.
I'd love to see Granlund in our top 6 right now, but probably not for $7 million.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see. And my question is, I read the responses to your tweets, Michael, and a lot of is Hynes on the hot seat or Guerin? And I see, Pete DeBoer. Mm-hmm. So your comments on that.
Look, I mean, again, these are people tweeting me. I have definitely not brought that up. I mean, I have not broached this with Bill. I'm just sort of using my own intuition here that he is not close to making a move. You only also get like so many times you could change coaches before everybody starts looking at you. And if you're seeing those tweets, fans are looking at Billy as well. The other thing is I know that Pete DeBoer is quite content to not work right now and make a lot of money to just scout for Hockey Canada, kind of the way John Tortorella is doing it for Team USA. And I don't think that the Wild are just going to fire John Hynes with term left on his contract and want Pete DeBoer at $5 million. But they've got to turn this around at some point, right? I mean, the only person with pressure in the entire organization right now is probably John Hynes. Billy's going nowhere. Krill's signed. The core's signed. Like, John's the only guy. So, it's not going to continue forever that they just keep on losing with the pressure on this organization to make the playoffs. Now, the only thing I'll say that does concern you from again, I said intuition point of view is now, while Bill Guerin hasn't gone into the locker room yet that I know of and torn the paint off the wall, when he took the tack the other day of in my story today that Anthony didn't read, is to meet with Kaprizov face to face and call Spurgeon and Foligno and have good conversations, but also intelligence gather to try to figure out what's going on and say that, that's a tack that usually you're trying to start to really grasp at things because there's only so many levers you could do before you have to do the inevitable. And I remember, before we went to Sweden a couple of years ago, it was that day they left for Sweden, he went freaking crazy in the locker room, one after another around the room. And he was hoping that would fix it. They go to Sweden, they lose both games. They come home, they play Detroit, right? Lost 3-1 in a horrendous game. in Sweden, he's like, I am not making a move. I'm not making a move. And all of a sudden, they lose to Detroit, and I start to read the tea leaves that they're about to make a move for Hynes. So this, it's starting to feel the same, the way that the guys are playing, but it's way early in the season.
Yeah.
And I know the fans want, something done, but you're if this slump, as Anthony always said, if this 10-game segment was in January, it'd just be a 10-game slump. And so I don't think that you just, every time the team stinks, you just think, all right, I'm going to go fire the coach.
Well, but at the same time, every coach is on the hot seat. I mean,
John Hynes will be fired one day.
And every coach is.
Sorry, John.
Well, they are, but I mean, like, if the Wild lose the next 10, he's on the hot seat. I don't think tomorrow he's worried about coming to work and having his key card not work. But there is a point where if a team that was expected to be a playoff team and had a roster that was built to be a contender, if this all of a sudden continues to spin, well, there is going to be a point where he and maybe both are on the hot seat.
Ken.
So a couple of comments before I ask my question.
Ken, you're getting very snippy on Twitter lately, by the way. Holy moly.
Well, I'm getting sick of people
You're like my
ripping into
filter
Johansson.
going after people.
People are ripping into Johansson.
We know you idolize Anthony, but you don't have to take every single opinion
I don't idolize
of his.
Johansson or Anthony, of course.
By the way, Brian, all of our mutual friends here, Brian reached out to me and had a lot of things that I should say to Anthony on this podcast.
Oh, good. I'll look forward to that. Tell him he has to show up.
Ripping into Johansson, who has 4 goals and 3 assists.
Yeah.
And
only forward on the roster that is not a negative.
Exactly.
Plus-minus player.
So a couple comments. I'm a little concerned that the Wild are where Boomer Gordon said about the Flames on a recent show. It's a little early to be getting late. And it's a little concerning about the Wild. A couple comments. I agree with you on Bouillon. I'm not worried about long-term. Jiricek is concerning on some of the brain-dead moves he makes. And then Volstead, it's a little early, but that was not a great game the other night. But here's the question. So hypothetical, you've just said we don't do anything. But if you were GM right now, is there anything you would do about where we are now?
It's so hard because, look, as I wrote in today's Athletic, there's been one significant trade since July 17th. And by the way, that was Dakota Joshua. Okay. Before that, it was Mitch Marner, which was a sign and trade. That wasn't really a trade. There was Zach Bolduc for Logan Mailloux. There hasn't been no trades. So that's one that's tough. 2 is that if you're the Wild, beyond the fact that you have guys with a lot of no trade protection and things like that, you don't want to start giving away like huge core pieces, but then the double edge is you definitely don't want to start giving away your first round pick unless you definitely lottery protect it. So there's just not a lot right now, which is also kind of to Bruce, right? Bruce's point on the first question is why Bill Guerin has to say it's fixable, because it has to come inside that locker room unless you are going to the tack that Mary said, which is John. I think Bill knows how difficult it is to make a significant trade right now. He's built this roster construction, and so it's got to be this. And
I think he came into this season knowing that at some point he'd make a deal to add a player.
But I think to add a player, thinking that they were going to be this really good team,
right? That's what I mean. To add a player, and so you also have to look at, in order to bring somebody of significance in, you have to give something, and they don't have a lot of trade chips right now that I think, and you have to be pretty convinced that you might be that player away from making some noise in the postseason before you're willing to. And I don't even want to throw out names like maybe it could be this guy as a chip or that guy as a chip, because I don't want to put any names out there. I obviously don't know anything about what those might be, but last year they had one trade chip and it was their number 1 pick, and they rolled the dice on that early. And I think this year they'd like to see for sure what they need before they're willing to give that.
The only thing I'll say is that it is at some point coming, probably in the next month. Now, how significant it is, and the only reason why I say that is Bill Guerin has made, as other than trade deadline moves, for the most part, off the top of my head right now, 4 in-season moves and they were all in November, pretty much, right? Zach Bogosian coming here on the same day. I think they traded Keelan Addison. The Greg Patterin trade, where they traded away, maybe they got Ian Cole for Greg Patterin, adding Ryan Reeves off waivers, and then
They
the
made
Juracek
the
deal.
Klingberg trade on the deadline, I think.
The
didn't
deadline,
they?
yeah. I'm just saying non-deadline moves all have come in November. So I think it's coming. But it's just got, the question is, what can it be? Because if you start trading core pieces away, like there are only a handful of guys, and a lot of them have some sort of no trade protection, right? There's Ryan Hartman, there's Spurgeon and Brodeen that have some flexibility, but there's not a lot of others. And so I think that he's going to try to, and also if you trade Brodeen or Spurgeon, you better get a really good defenseman back, right? Because we just talked about what is with Zeev. And so there's just it's not simple. And so to Anthony's point is, I think Billy always tried to have this capital of money, and that he was going to eventually go big game hunting. But now I don't think he ever envisioned that 10 games in the season, he might have to try to save the season. So that's a very different tack that I'm sure they're trying to navigate right now. And I'm sure he's on the phone. I guarantee you. So he just wants the team to work it out. But when you start sounding the alarms and admitting and volunteering, I didn't even volunteering to me during my sit down with him that you've called the captains up. I think that what you're doing is you're saying, all right, fix this right now in the room, or I'm going to have to start figuring things out myself, because there is pressure. I mean, they're not just going to give up on the season and say, we're going for Gavin McKenna right now,
No,
So.
and Hynes also had meetings with all these guys during this time when they came home. I think he met with every player on the roster just to.
That was in today's Athletic.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
And it's, my people were telling me this a couple days ago, but when we chatted with him, I forget which day it was, maybe in New Jersey, and he said, when I get home, I'm intending to meet with each guy to just reset a little bit. Here's what we think we need from you, because at that point, I don't think they looked at one player on their roster and said, he's giving us everything that we thought we'd get from him.
One thing, I don't know if you were in the locker room last night, but we got Kirill in a scrum, and he concerned me a little bit, because I don't think that he is on the same page of the way that they want the game played and that you sort of need the game played. Now, this is a lot of Russian players like this, Kucherov, people like that. Alex Ovechkin's a little differently, but most superstars in the league want to play direct. In Russia, you're taught to go east, west, and things like that. And we see that he is not almost willing to stop the cross-ice passes that are turning out to be turnovers. And last night, it finally hurt them with 2 winding up in their net and one ending up being the Middleton penalty that ended up in their net. And after the game, he basically said, I want to do give and goes. I want to, I want to have fun playing hockey. And he almost seems like defiant, insistent that this is how I'm going to play. And they just gave him 8 years at 17. He's an absolute superstar. He, as we saw last night, as much as he hurt them defensively, he still did incredible things to get them back in the game. So you got to let him play with that freedom. So how do you handle
you got
that?
to get him to buy in, and he always has in the past. Those guys are always going to make turnovers. How many times have we watched he and Bant Zuccarello make 2 or 3 mistakes, 2 or 3 turnovers in a game, but then make 4 plays that lead to scoring chances, and you say, well,
Right.
That's what you get with those guys. But it's never been a lack of commitment to playing the game in the other end, and so I don't have a concern about it, because he's always been that guy. Every time we talk to opposing broadcasters or other media members and other coaches, you'll always hear things like he's a first-line star with fourth-line work ethic. And that's not an accident that all those guys use that same phrase when they talk about him. I don't think we've seen it yet this year. But
although I will
we
tell you,
always have.
last night, man, was he drenched. That guy, to your point, who's talking
I
about
thought the
exuding
third period
energy.
last night was the first time we saw We saw defensemen up in the play. You saw a commitment to a forecheck along the wall, and it started with the first shift of the period, and it continued for 20 minutes.
Again, third period, like that's the way Ryan Hartman's got to play every night. Like, man, was he good in the third period? But you got to see that every game, you know. And there's a lot of guys on this team that just haven't given the consistent effort, night in, night out, period after period. Question.
So Russo, you seem like a pessimist, like I am.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping though that you can tell us some
She
things
is
that
perceptive.
Yeah, I know.
I'm hopeful.
20 years of covering this team.
Can you give us something that you're hopeful for the rest of the season?
I guess you're right because I'm having trouble coming up with one. I mean, look, no. First of all, I'm hopeful for this team to get its head out of its ass and start playing actual quality hockey on a consistent basis. Like this is like I know Anthony makes fun of this, but like when you're in my position and you're scrolling Twitter all day, you know, it would make anybody a pessimist. Holy hell! Like you would not
don't scroll Twitter
you would
all
not.
day.
It is mandatory. I have to let you know what's going on in the public.
I think you're just a little bitter because the Scribes went 1-8
you know what?
last
Ass
week.
wipe. Listen to me. Keep that in there.
Yeah.
All right. So look, last night we're in the post-game press conference, and I go to Anthony because he and I played each other this week in fantasy. I said, "Do you know what the score was?" And he was like, "Oh, you know, last night I looked, it was 5-4." And then he pauses for like a second. He goes, it's now 8-1. Like on the last day of the week, by the way, which means that that not only did I lose the week, but I got absolutely bodied during the week.
Yep.
But it was just the pompous way that you did it.
You asked me a question.
Yeah,
I
but
said
it
I
was
looked
like
in
you
the
acted
morning.
like you thought it was close when you
It was.
definitely knew that it was.
No. When I looked in the morning, it was 5-4, and
Yeah.
then when I hadn't looked until we were sitting in the press conference room, and I looked, and it was 8-1.
Yeah, 8-1.
Well, what did you want me to say?
Gorg
No
almost fell out
comment?
of his seat.
Yeah.
It just anyway.
It was a tough week for the Scribes.
Yeah, it was a tough week. You know what bothered me the most about this week is that they wrote "Enjoy King" on your Starbucks cup. That bothered me too.
Yeah. And
Enjoy King.
I know. The day before they wrote "Sound Good" on it, and this was when we were on the road, so it isn't like it was somebody that knew what I did or anything. So it was. I thought it was good vibes.
Yeah.
Good karma. Although I had bad karma. Did I tell you the story about my Lime scooter?
No.
So we're in Washington. We're staying in a different neighborhood this time. We're staying in Pentagon City. And it's like 3 miles to get to the monuments, which I love to walk around. So the first day we get there, I rent a Lime scooter because I thought I can't walk 3 miles, but and the traffic was terrible. I buzzed down. I'm going through this park on the Lime scooter, middle of nowhere, and the scooter dies, runs out of batteries. So there wasn't like other scooters laying around. It was people were just biking by me. So I leave this scooter in the weeds and walk the 1.5 miles into Washington and have my night there. I took a bike home just to make sure that I didn't have the same thing happen. That worked great. But then the next day, I'm leaving practice, and I bummed around Washington for a while, and I'm going to go back. And I took a different kind of scooter. I took a Vio scooter. Like you kind of sit on them. If you pedaled them, the knees would hit you in the chin. It's like a really low seater thing. So I'm going on the same path
I would have
took
given
home
anything to see
the
this.
night before. And all of a sudden, I'm on a bike path. It's not like I'm, off-roading. And I get down this hill, and at the bottom, the thing just dies. And I thought, what in the world? And so I keep hitting the button. It won't go. So I'm pedaling for a
Is it
while.
because you were out of radius?
Well, that's what I thought. So I look at the app, and they have a red circle, but I'm outside the circle. So I was like, okay, I'm in a legal spot, but I had to go back up the hill by the Potomac River to get up to the other side. So I get off the thing and I push it up the hill on the other side. And so now I start pedaling and it won't go. I glide down this hill next to the Pentagon and I get to the bottom where I'm now maybe 1/2 mile from our hotel. And I'm like, okay, I'll just go past that stoplight. Maybe it's the Pentagon has some kind of like shield around it.
Hilarious if like Secret Service just rushed
I
up on you.
went by a Secret Service truck. I almost knocked on the window to say, am I like illegal riding this thing here? So I'm in a full sweat now because I've been pedaling this thing that the pedals, like your feet only go about this far on each pedal. And I get to the bottom, it still won't go. So I chuck the thing into the Pentagon parking lot and I go on the VO help like contact us thing. And I said, hey, I left your piece of crap scooter in the Pentagon parking lot. You can pick it up there. It died on me a mile ago. I've been pushing it and pedaling it for a mile, but now I'm late for a meeting, so I don't have time to walk it back. And the guy responds with, yeah, you must have left a service area, so you'll have to walk it back. I said, but I'm not walking it back. You guys can come and pick it up, but it's in the Pentagon parking lot right next to the Secret Service truck. You can pick it up there.
Unreal.
I'll never ride VO scooters again.
No. Crazy. All right, question.
So I checked my sources. Minnesota Wild app. Johansson is not a positive player. He's a -1.
Oh, he was positive going into last night.
So going into last night.
Yep.
So Bogosian's the only positive player. Juracek is a 0. Everybody else is a negative. And so to ask Michael, because I did read you on Twitter today, do you have $2 billion that I could borrow to buy the team?
Somebody was basically, so again, Anthony is, on the golf course all day.
Yeah, I was trying to calm my panic level.
I actually didn't mean it as like a snipe. I just thought it was a funny line. But somebody basically this morning, while everybody's going after Hynes and Guerin, but then finally somebody just chimes in and goes, the one constant of this team's mediocrity for the last whatever years has been Craig Leopold, and just continue to rail on Craig Leopold. And finally I just quote tweeted, I'm like, then buy the team from him for $2 billion, if you want it. So that was the joke. But
yeah, I mean, I
as I joked with somebody else on Twitter today, we could all divvy it up and get in and try to buy the team, but I'm not paying the $18.1 million in signing bonuses to Kirill every year. You all could take that, but I'll help buy the team.
But so anyway, I had season tickets for 13 years, and I gave them up after last year. I've seen this movie before. How is this not Koivu, Parise, Suter era again, where we start trading assets just to make the playoffs? The goal is to win a Stanley Cup. Yeah. Sometimes you got to take a step back to take two forward.
Well, that's kind of what I was trying to ask Anthony.
And that's where the Leopold thing comes in.
Well, I think there's a difference because, number one, I think Kirill Kaprizov is a different player than Zach Parise. Matt Boldy is a different player than Mikko Koivu. Faber, Bouillon might be different players than Suter. I don't think we know that for sure yet. But what that team never had was a true superstar. Mm-hmm. Zach Parise was a great player, but he wasn't a guy that struck fear in the opponent. He just worked his ass off every night. Ryan Suter was a really good defenseman for a really long time, but he was not a game changer. He wasn't the Cale Makar, Quinn Hughes type that brought you to the edge of your seat when he touched the puck. Bouillon could be that guy. Mm-hmm. So I think what's different about this team is they've got superstars. That team never did. They had a whole bunch of pretty good hockey players that bought in, worked hard, and overachieved to make the playoffs every year.
But I think to your point, and this is the quandary that I think they do find themselves in, is that it's this never-ending cycle of how do you get, because look, again, to Anthony's point, is that to take that step back, sometimes you got to do it for 10 years. And I think it's easy for all of us to say, put yourself in Craig Leopold's spot and say, just lose and, try to get Gavin McKenna and this guy and this guy and this guy and this guy. And the reality is all these teams that have been building up, none of them have won a cup yet, right? I mean, most
of them haven't even made the playoffs yet.
Exactly. So like even Edmonton has not, they've gotten to the finals 2 years in a row, but they have not won that cup.
Yeah, and look at what it took for them.
Yeah, exactly.
They had the number one pick four times in 6 years.
But then to take the other side, it's like, how do you then, when all these teams have all these great young cores, how do you get that without bottoming out a little bit? Because
some teams have done it though. Like Tampa did it. Yeah. They never really bottomed out. Yeah. And it can be done.
Colorado did it in a genius way. They'd get 46 points, get McKinnon. They'd make the playoffs a couple of years, then all of a sudden have a horrendous year and get McCarr. Then have a horrendous year and get.
And some teams have had that fortune where they just were terrible at the perfect time when that guy was there.
Oh man!
Because there have been some other years where teams have gotten the number one pick and it hasn't been a franchise player.
I was talking to Eric Tolsky for this. Yep.
Right. Yeah. Nolan Patrick's a perfect example.
Yeah. But I mean, I was talking to Eric Tolsky Brofsky the other day about Seth Jarvis for the story I'm working on. And remember, it was like the perfect thing for them. They bought themselves a first-round pick by taking on the Patrick Marleau contract and then buying him out. They get that first-round pick. Then the pandemic happens. They change all the rules for the draft, and their odds skyrocketed. Next thing you know, they draft Seth Jarvis, and look, they have a cornerstone player. Last couple of questions for the show, and we'll wrap it up.
You made an interesting comment about Faber. And I remember when he was in college, he wasn't racking up a lot of points. They had plenty of other people to do it.
Right.
What do you see as the best role for him to play for the team now and then when they're clicking?
I think that's the role, is the shutdown guy that scores a little bit but isn't necessarily quarterbacking your top power play. I go back to, he didn't run the power play when he was in college, but when they were in the final, I heard the Quinnipiac coach after the game when they won that game in overtime, and he said as soon as we saw them start without Brock Faber on the ice, we knew we had a chance to score quickly right off that faceoff. I mean, they knew that out of all the great defensemen that team had, they had Jackson Lacombe, who's in Anaheim, Ryan Johnson, who was a first-round pick at Buffalo. But it was Faber they were worried about. And you made the point earlier about playing like Jacob Slavin, who he played with in the Four Nations tournament. He's playing with a guy like Jonas Brodin. I mean, he could be that type of guy and be the guy that nobody wants to see against all night long, even if it means he only scores 30 or 40 points a year. But he could have a long, very good career being that guy, in my opinion.
Yeah, and
I think he has more offense to him than, say, Brodin does. But I think where he could be a superstar, a perennial all-star, it's hard to say perennial Norris contender because those guys tend to be guys who score more, but the guy that nobody wants any part of as an opponent.
Yeah, I do think that I know their intention coming into this year was to decrease his ice time because they felt in the second half he was wearing down. And one way of doing that was because they had Boyum and Spurgeon and Juracek was to take him off the power play. But last night I think was a good example of how much he actually still adds to that power play and how much he's just at this point. I mean, not that Juracek's been on it, but he is definitely better at this point than him. And you don't need to force feed the others. But if Spurgeon is just the more stable guy to have on the number one unit, Boyum obviously has to be on the number two. So it's just a really fascinating thing. The one area that he has to get better at is killing penalties. He's been in the last 3 years, there on the penalty kill, he's been on the ice for a team high by far, 70 goals. I wrote it in tomorrow's Athletic. That's one area that he's got to really take ownership of, and I think he wants to. Final question of the show.
Well, I had two, but do you only want one?
All right, no. I mean, final person of the show.
Sure. Okay, we'll start with this. Just keep up the theme with the defenseman. I know you talked about Zeev and how you mentioned, he kind of plays 5-on-5 like the power play. But what about in overtime? If they were to because they've been in overtime 3 times, right? And they haven't.
I was surprised they didn't use him yesterday.
And yesterday I felt like it'd be the perfect time,
really?
Right? They had the puck in the O zone the whole time for the 3 minutes.
Yeah,
they were making those changes.
But
what would it take to even use him in overtime?
Well, you have to remember, number one, the other team has Macklin Celebrini on it, and the last thing you want is Zeev Buium having to defend Mac or any other of their superstar players. And you have 3 really good skating defensemen in Spurgeon, Faber, and Brodin. I thought it was interesting last night. They almost always start
Spurgeon,
with Eriksson Ek, Kaprizov,
and Brodin.
But in this case, Celebrini was not on the ice to start, so he said, I want to save Brodin and Eriksson Ek for when Celebrini's on the ice, so we're going to start with Spurgeon and Rossi, and it worked out great. They won. They had possession for 3 minutes and 40 seconds. Their plan couldn't have been better, and it didn't have anything to do with, they didn't lose it because Zeev Buium wasn't on the ice. Those 3 defensemen, most teams would take any one of those guys on the ice in overtime.
Yeah,
and Zeev's you just can't trust him right now to defend, and the only guys you're going to see in overtime are the best the other team has to offer.
Has anybody watched Colorado lately, by the way? You know who you can't trust to defend? Nathan McKinnon. Holy mackerel, has he been bad. In that situation. So it's not always that you're the most skilled person. I would have probably used him, but what I did like about Hynes yesterday is I think Hynes also recognized that Brock Faber was playing like Brock Faber, and he just kept on. It went Faber, Spurgeon, Faber. It felt like that. So
Yeah, he's the one that was out there though. And like, would they even be using him at any point? You think in the future?
Well, they will.
They will, but not now.
Yeah.
I mean, right now, no. And you could see his first shift in overtime. His first change was to Brodin because he expected Celebrini to be the next guy over the wall for San Jose. But then once they had possession,
was it Brodin? I thought Brodin didn't play in overtime.
Brodin played he was the first
shift
guy in.
Okay,
because I think they thought, but then they never got another change. So then he just kept Spurgeon Faber when they were in the offensive zone the whole time.
So funny. That one, I was watching the Utah-Colorado game last week, and the one McKinnon and Nate just had an unbelievable mistake in yesterday's game, but the game against Utah, holy mackerel, like Brock Nelson comes out, he wins the face-off, he goes right to the bench. McKinnon comes out, and then McKinnon goes into the zone, decides for some reason to weave out of the zone, and then just coughs it up right to Utah, and then they and then doesn't back check and lost. So that's what I was referring to. And final question.
The other thing too is just dabbled in a little bit of play-by-play lately, and I'm still recovering from this voice thing, and I had just an awful time trying to call this volleyball game with no voice. So Anthony, I'm just curious if you had any similar stories where the voice has just been cooked, but you've had to power through and just try to do a game.
Not very often, but every once in a while, yeah. And there's times where I in my early years, I did this.
There have been a couple times that Margot's like, "Oh my god."
Yeah. Well, usually she harasses me that meant she thinks I stayed out too late the night before. But,
usually she's right.
Yeah, a lot of times. But I had a few where it was just overwork related. I did 16 games at the state high school hockey tournament, maybe 2 or 3 years in a row, where I did the afternoon on the radio or on TV and the evening on the radio. And by the end of those weeks, I had very little left. And the only thing I'd stay away from soda, I'd stay away from citrus, and so like no tomatoes, no lime, lemon, and no soda, just a lot of water and a lot of tea, and hope for the best.
Yeah. You work hard.
Well, I mean, some of those weeks, that was a lot of work. 16 games in 4 days. That'd be actually it was 14.
Especially the way you call goals. I mean, that would be.
Yeah, it was actually 14. It was 4-4, 4, and then 2 on the last day. But they were great weeks. I loved them. But man, it was at the end. I slept until like Wednesday.
Final thought of the show, and I've been meaning to ask you about this even privately for the last the NBA and the gambling stuff. Like, how nervous do you think like all the professional leagues are? Not just the NHL, but all of them, but also the NHL. I mean, because the NHL is so easy to manipulate with these prop bets. I mean, you got a player with a shot and a half. It'd be easy to get to that player and be like, don't shoot that second shot tonight, or vice versa. I mean, it just seems like it is so easy in this sport to.
Well, I think I'm sure all leagues are terrified by it. I mean, it's interesting how it's like because the other thing that then came out this week was John Harbaugh and the injury report in Baltimore, where he reports that his quarterback is a full participant, but then it turns out he was just running the scout team all day. And of all weeks to make that mistake where, gamblers are pouring money onto the Ravens, then he announces that he's out and the line changes by 5 points. Well, all those other bets are still alive. And, baseball, when the manager sets the lineup, the first people that find out about it are the casinos in Vegas before the broadcasters find out, just because they want all that information. I think these leagues right now are all just hoping to God that it doesn't stretch into their league.
Yeah.
And you can bet that there'll be refresher meetings, I'm sure.
Oh, no, there's no doubt. Right now, I mean, the
sport.
Wild have it coming, like the NHLPA is doing its rounds now, and you know that they are, and you can bet the league. I think they're playing us out like the Oscars because the music just came on in Tuttle's for a little bit.
Yeah.
So I think that Tim Tuttle's like, get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
Did I ever, I've told you, so I covered the Heat in 2005. I covered Damon Jones. And I think I've told you, Damon Jones was like my favorite player on the Miami Heat. The guy was hilarious, so nice, and buddies with Shaq and everything. So I was actually impressed on ESPN this week where Shaq came out and basically said he was ashamed of all these guys and pointed out, I'm really tight with Damon Jones. But I remember covering that team, and he was like my go-to that entire season during the lockout. He was such a really funny good dude to deal with. So I was shocked this week when all of a sudden that name popped up again. All right, thanks to our incredible sponsors and for coming out to Tuttle's. We will have a live show in November, so stay tuned to the date for that. Thanks to our incredible sponsors, Aquarius Home Services, your local authorized dealer for Connecticut water treatment systems, Clamshell Beach Resorts, Onyx Maps, Twil in the Edina Galleria, Royal Credit Union, and Stretch Lab. Thanks to everybody for coming on out.
Thank you.
But the world